Welcome to another fucking watch-along. I'm your host, Kellerman, and today we're going to be watching the first US presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And this one's going to be just a little wonky because it was actually my first live watch-along, so you'll see me responding to comments and chat messages that you can't see. To be notified of future watch-alongs, make sure that you're subscribed to my Substack. If you want to get a little silly during tonight's watch-along, I've put drinking game rules down below. Now let's get this show on the road.
Expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class.
Oh, great. They're talking real fast to get in as many points as they can.
Millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people.
They're not. All of those things have just kind of come up recently and been politicized.
And they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality.
That's not
and
true.
we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration.
The
and
economy
border
was good
security
under
during
Trump.
this
I mean, it's hard to
but,
debate that,
I
although
would like to
COVID
let
happened,
Vice
and you have
President
to.
Harris respond on
There's a lot of
the
ifs, ands, and buts.
I'd
you know,
love to. Let's
to take into
talk
consideration.
about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
COVID really
Donald
did that
Trump
more than
left
Donald
us
Trump.
the
But
worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And
Must
what
be-
we
she must
have
be
done
referring
is
to
clean
January
up
6th
Donald
there.
Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all, in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
Okay,
That's
Trump
out there.
again says
I haven't
nothing to
read
do
it.
with
I don't wanna
2025,
read it
Project
purposely.
2025.
I'm not going
so
to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have
good,
nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it
I don't know
was
how many of
before
you
the
remember the
came in.
pandemic, but I do
Nobody's
not
ever
think it
seen
was
anything
handled
like
well,
it.
personally,
We made
by the
ventilators for the
administration at the
entire
time.
world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people
did
give
do
me
all
credit
those
for
things
rebuilding
after
the
he
military.
told
They give me
everybody not to
credit
worry
for a lot
about
of
it.
things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic.
Yeah.
But the
He
only
did a much
jobs they
better
got
job
were
after people
bounce-back
convinced them
jobs.
it was
These
a
were
real
jobs
disease happening.
Bounced back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look
Oh,
at
I'm
his
sorry. Yeah,
economic
you know,
plan,
honestly,
it's
I'd
all
love
about
to have
tax
the
breaks
debate
for
just
the
playing
richest
behind
people.
me, but
I am offering what I
Substack
describe
does not have
as an
that capability
opportunity
yet.
economy. And
I wanted to
the
try
best
this
economists
first
in our country,
so that I
if
can give
not
them
the
feedback
world,
about how
have
to
reviewed our
update the app,
relative
right? So if you guys
plans
have
for the
suggestions,
future
by
of
all means,
America.
let me know.
What Goldman Sachs has said.
And if it looks like I'm
is
sweating,
that
I
Donald
am.
Trump's
It's 100
plan
degrees in
would
Los
make the
Angeles.
economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton
just
School
a
of Finance, and
soundbite.
many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up
Who do
our,
we believe
our
here?
worth, our
Kamala
value
says
as a
that these
country. It's gonna
16
make
laureates
people want to be able
think
to
that
go
Trump's
and
plan
work,
is terrible, and Trump says
create
that his
jobs
plan
and create
that
a lot of
the same
good,
people say his
solid
plan is
money
good.
for our country. And just to finish off, she
Can't wait to see all the
doesn't have a
fact checks
plan.
that come out
She
tomorrow.
copied
We're not
Biden's
fact checking
plan,
shit
and
tonight,
it's
by the
like
way. We're
4
gonna have a little
sentences,
fun
like
while we watch
run,
this.
spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan.
I hope you've got
She
your
doesn't have a
pizza or
plan.
your popcorn.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down
I
on
got
something
pizza.
you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in
Good point, Trump.
billions of dollars,
The tariffs
hundreds
remain
of billions of dollars. I had
under
no
the current
inflation,
administration.
virtually
However,
no inflation. They had the highest inflation
probably has
perhaps
something to
in
do
the
with
history
our
of
current
country,
inflation,
because
right?
I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying.
Well, not being
with
able
what
to buy
they've
eggs
done.
and stuff
They've
recently
destroyed
has
the
been
economy.
determined that
And all you have to do is
the
look at
grocery
a poll.
stores have been price
The polls
gouging us.
say 80
That
and
just recently
85 and
came
even
out,
90%
so
that the
that's not
Trump
due to
economy was
anything other
great,
than the
that
grocery
their
companies
economy
being
was
greedy.
terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century.
Damn,
which means
shots fired by
focusing
Kamala.
on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point.
What am I drinking?
When we know that Xi was responsible
I'm drinking a lovely
for
Blue Moon
lacking
to
and
accompany
not
my
giving
pizza
us
tonight.
transparency about the origins
My
of
personal
COVID.
beer of choice.
President Trump will let
Blue
you
Moon
First
is
of all,
not
they bought their
sponsoring
chips
this
from
drink along.
Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of
Nobody pays for the fucking
philosophies
news.
like they have and policies
Except
like
for you.
they have. I don't say her because she has
Thank
no
you
policy.
for all of you paying
Everything
subscribers.
that she believed
Really,
3 years
helps
ago
me
and 4 years ago is
continue
out the
doing
window.
this.
She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy, but if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And
Trump's gonna send
it
us some
will
merch.
be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he
I think
taught
this is
her
the
well.
first time that
But
he's
when you
ever,
look
like,
at what she's
specifically
done to
called
our
Kamala a
country,
Marxist.
and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher
That's
than
not
the
per month,
21.
that number
That's
he
bigger
just
than
said.
New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you
Some of
mentioned
them are
before, we'll talk
criminals,
about
but
immigration
that's-
later. Well, bad
A
immigration
majority
is the
of the
worst thing that
immigrants
can
coming
happen
in are
to
not,
our
it's not
economy.
like a
They
lot of
have,
criminals.
and she has destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost
What kind of
policy
pizza
that
made
you
it?
say
Honestly,
they have to hate our country.
I was running late and I had to settle for a Papa John's pizza.
I want to turn to the issue
Don't at
of
me.
abortion.
Actually, you know what?
President
Do
Trump
at me.
often
Do you like
touted
Papa
that you were able
John's?
to kill Roe
You a
v.
Papa
Wade.
John's or a Pizza
Last
Hut
year,
person?
you said that
Or
you were
Domino's?
proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last
Oh, what
month,
people
you said
saying
that
to me?
your administration would be great for women.
Is there
and their
actually any liquid in the
reproductive
coffee
rights.
cup
In
at the
home
end of your
state
news
Florida,
update?
you surprised many
Yes.
with regard to your 6-week abortion ban.
Usually
because
it's just
initially
water.
it said that it was too short.
But yes,
and you
there
said,
is something in it.
I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very
Always
next day, you
inaccurate.
reversed
Who?
course and said
Me?
you would vote to support the
That's not
6-week
right.
ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue
Hey,
of
some people are
abortion
drinking with
because
me.
you've changed your position
I love
so many
this.
times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm
Here
doing
for the
that
pizza
vote is
debate.
because
Yeah.
the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job. but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me.
What Donald Trump is describing when he's talking about these 9-month rules with abortion
52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade
and extreme
into the
circumstances.
states. And
nobody wants to kill a recently born
and
baby.
Heart and strength
that's not what pro-choicers are talking about.
We were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also.
Okay, Trump believes in exceptions for rape and those sorts of things. That's good.
Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to
thank
get
you
your
for clarifying. There is no state where you can
kill
kill a baby after it's born.
And that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that.
Again,
a 12
what
or 13-year-old
Kamala is talking about
survivor
now
of incest
are
being
rare,
forced to carry a
extreme
pregnancy
circumstances.
to term?
Maybe
They
not
don't
as rare
want
as they
that.
should be, but
And I
the
pledge to
incest
you,
rape thing.
when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025,
how can she
there would be
keep
a national
calling it
abortion,
his
a
Project
monitor that would be
2025 when
monitoring
he's
your
standing right next to her
pregnancies,
saying
your
that it's not his?
miscarriages? I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie.
Right. There's
I'm
no
not signing
ban.
a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban.
But see, the problem is that everybody thinks that the other one is lying.
Republicans, and everybody else. And every
Trump is
legal
saying right now
scholar
that
wanted
he
it to be
does not
brought
want an
back
abortion
into the
ban. He
states,
wants to
and
be
the
up to the
states are
states.
voting.
But
and it may
people
take a
who
little
don't like
time,
Trump
but for
just
52
think that
years,
he's
this
lying.
issue has
He does
torn
want
our country
an abortion
apart,
ban,
and they've
and
wanted
that
it back in
Project
the states.
2025
and I did
is
something that nobody
part of
thought
his
was
policy,
possible.
even though he says
The
it
states
isn't.
are now
There's no
voting.
way to
What
convince
she
you
says
or
is
anybody
an
that that's
absolute
not
lie.
true.
And as
To
far
be
as the
clear, I'm not
abortion
trying to
ban,
convince you
no,
that it's not
I'm
true.
not
You
in
can
favor
believe
of
whatever the
abortion
fuck
ban,
you want.
but it doesn't matter.
That's what this whole
because
channel's about.
This issue has
You
now
listen,
been taken
you
over by
learn.
the states.
Would
You
you
make up
veto
your own
a
mind.
national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then
Reproductive health
I
should
think
be a human
probably her
right,
boss,
just like mental
if you
health.
call him
But
a boss,
mental
he
health.
spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss
What?
went out and said, "We'll do it again. We'll do it a different way."
Mental
He went
health
out,
is not
got rejected
something
again
the
by
government
Supreme
provides
Court.
you.
So all these students got,
I mean, they have
taunted
programs
with this whole
to
thing
assist
about
you.
this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been.
suppose,
Part of
would
the
be the
reason
difference,
they
right?
lost.
Is that the point you were
to
making?
The
Trying
millions
to
and
help you
millions
here,
of
but I don't
people
really
that
know
had
how
to pay
to.
off their student loans, they didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no,
Can
because
you
the
hear my
woman,
air conditioning? Is it
J.D.
loud?
Vance has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people.
They didn't even come close to
and a lot
getting
of other
student
people
loans.
that
They
had
took
loans.
care of a bunch of
They can
student
never
loans.
get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she
What?
says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get
Don't
it out of
swear to
Congress
death.
and out of the federal government. And we did something
don't
that
understand what you're
everybody
trying to
said
say.
couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people,
sweat to
working
death.
women who
Do I look
are
really
working
sweaty?
one or two
Okay.
jobs, who
I'm gonna
can
turn off my air
barely
conditioning.
afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of
better? Can you hear me
America
better?
have not, the majority of Americans believe
fix
in a
my hair
woman's
here,
right to
'cause
make
we're live.
decisions about her own body.
We're live, everybody.
And that is why in every state where
Well, it's
this
just gonna
issue
look
has
fucked
been
up.
on
Who
the ballot,
cares?
in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's
See, they're
another
just
lie.
calling each other
I have
liars.
been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF.
If
I
they're
have
both
been a
lying, this
leader.
is just
in fact,
literally
when
pointless.
they got a very negative
problem is that
decision
people
on
watching
IVF
this
from the Alabama
believe
courts,
one of them.
I saw the people of Alabama and the
But they
legislature
are
2
probably
days later
both
voted
lying.
it in. I've been a leader.
I mean, about
on
some
it.
issues.
They
They're
know
also
that,
probably
and
both telling
everybody
the
else
truth
knows
about
it.
other issues.
I have been a leader on fertilization,
They're politicians,
IVF.
you know, at the
and
end
the
of the
other
day.
thing, you should ask.
Trump's
Will
going
she
to pay
allow
for
abortion
IVF.
in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her
Why-
that question?
why don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question, would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question,
you
would you
could
veto?
you could do
Ignoring each other's
abortions in the
questions is pretty
7th
good.
month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably
Oh, boy,
after
really
birth.
talking over each
Just
other
look
now.
at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to
He's talking
immigration
about
and
a
border
really
security. We know
rare
it's an issue
extreme
that's important to
circumstance.
Republicans, Democrats,
It's
voters across the
not.
board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act?
You've had to
And
drive
would
to
you have
another
done
state for over
anything
20
differently
years.
from
What
President
state are
Biden
you
on
in?
this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress,
Why is the
including some of the
government
most
between your
conservative members
legs?
of the United States Senate,
Got
came up
news
with
for
a
you. The
border
government's fucking
security
all of
bill,
us.
which I supported.
It's between all of our
And
legs.
that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion.
Attacking his
boredom.
rallies is pretty good.
And I will tell you, the
I
one
know
thing
he's
you
very
will not
proud
hear
of
him
his
talk
rallies.
about
So
is you.
Kamala's
You will
really
not hear him talk
hitting
about
him where
your
it hurts.
needs,
It might
your
even be
dreams,
considered
and your
kind of a
needs
low
and your
blow.
desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President
See, now
Harris,
I
thank
thought
you.
that
President
Harris
Trump,
had a
on
good
that point,
answer
I wanted you to
there,
respond.
I would
but
like to
everybody who
respond.
doesn't like her will just say that she was lying.
That bill and
So
successfully so,
her
that would
good
put
points
thousands of additional agents and
are
officers on the
meaningless
First,
to
let me
people
respond
who
this to the
aren't
rallies.
listening.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
People
And
don't go
the
to her
people that
rallies.
do go,
Of course
she's
they
bussing
do.
them in and paying them to be there.
People
and
go to both
then
people's rallies.
showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our
do
country
need
by
lie detectors
allowing
at the
these
debates. That would be
millions
great.
and millions of
That'd be
people
great.
to come into our
Who
country
said people don't go
and
to her
look at
rallies?
what's happening to the towns all over
course they do.
the United States.
What are you
And a lot of
talking
towns
about?
don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the
This is
dogs, the
defending
people
his
that came
rally.
in.
Yeah.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's
Would I go to a
destroying
Trump
this
rally?
country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't
If
have
they
a
paid me
chance
to, I
of
guess. I
success.
wouldn't go to anybody's
Not only
rally.
success, we'll end up being
By my own-
Venezuela on steroids.
I would go for you.
I just want to
if you guys
clarify
wanted
here,
me
you
to go
bring
to
up
a rally, I
Springfield,
guess I would go do a
Ohio,
rally. But
and ABC News did reach out
I
to
have
the city
no
manager
interest.
there.
I
He
watch the
told us
rallies. We do
there have been
watch-alongs
no
for the
credible
rallies. Why would I have
reports
to
of
go to
specific
one?
claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence
Springfield
of that. Vice President
police
Harris, I'll let you respond
have
to
said
the rest
that
of it.
that the issue that's being
Talk
politicized
about
is not an issue.
extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear.
I think she's got him on a lot of those quotes from
President
his
Trump, I'll give you a quick
former
minute to respond here.
employees, but
Thank you, because when I hear that,
he did
see, I'm
fire
a
all those
different
people,
kind
so
of
they
a
do
person.
kind of
I
have,
fired most
unfortunately,
of those
they have
people.
a
Not
vested
so
interest
graciously.
in
They
making
did
him look bad.
bad
So.
things or a bad job.
I'm not saying
I
it's not
fired them.
true. I'm
They
just
never fired
saying
one person. They didn't
can't
fire
really just
anybody
take
having
their
to
word
do with
for these
Afghanistan
things.
and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So
Who do
when
I think is
somebody
winning
does a
so
bad
far?
job,
Not- I mean-
I fire him. And you take a guy
I don't know.
like
I feel like
Esper,
Harris
he was
kind
no
of
good,
has
I
Trump
fired
on his
him, so he
heels,
writes a
don't
book.
you? I
Another
mean,
one
I
writes a
feel
book,
like Trump
because
is
with me,
having
they
to
can write
defend
books, with
himself
nobody
a
else
lot
can
and
they?
not.
But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire
He hasn't
anybody.
talked much about
Look at
what
the
he
economy.
will do
Look at the inflation.
as
They didn't
much as
fire any
what
of their
she
economists. They
isn't
have the
doing
same
or
people.
what
That's a
happened
good way
long ago,
not
blah,
to
blah,
have
blah.
books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes
Literally
than any
nobody's winning,
Republican
yeah.
in
I would have to
history
agree.
by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation.
Yeah, who
in
do you
the
guys
history of
think
our
is
country.
winning?
You
Trump's
say you would
winning?
use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have
This is
no
so much
problem
better
using
than
the
the
US
last
military.
debate.
You also said you would
Yeah,
use
at
local
least
police.
Kamala's
How
coherent.
would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals,
Okay.
many millions
Donald,
of criminals.
stop
They
talking
allowed
about what they
terrorists.
did.
They allowed
Tell us
common street
how
criminals.
you want to
they
change
allowed
it.
people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States.
You can't just close the border.
And told
That's
by their
unconstitutional.
countries like
So what
Venezuela,
are you
don't
actually
ever
going to
come
do?
back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history.
They're not
for them
taking
to
criminals off the
allow,
streets and
I
giving
think they
them to the
probably
United
did it because they
States.
think they're
There
going
are
to get votes, but it's not
particular
worth it
situations
because
in
they're
which
destroying the fabric
prisoners are
of our
transferred
country
and
by
things
what
of
they've
that
done.
nature, but
there's never been anything
that's
done like
ridiculous.
this at all.
Venezuela,
They've
first of all,
destroyed the fabric of our country.
is completely
Millions of
upside
people
down right
let
now
in.
because
And
of
all
their
over the world,
supposedly
crime is down
stolen
all over the world
election.
except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and
We
it's
do not
happening at
have a
levels
new
that
form
nobody
of
thought
crime
possible.
called
President
migrant
Trump, as you
crime.
know, the
First of
FBI
all,
says
migrant crime
overall
has existed
violent crime is
forever.
actually coming
And
down in
second
this
of
country,
all,
but Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris, I'll
FBI
get you-
It's not
they were
as big of a
defrauding
problem
statements.
as he
they,
has made
They
it
didn't
seem.
include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been
Just look
found
up the crime rates.
liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn
quickly,
the
I can only see
page
data
on this
that goes up to
same
2022,
old tired rhetoric and address
but the crime rate has been
needs of
going
the
down
American
since
people.
2019.
Address what we need to do about the housing
Actually,
shortage,
it went
which
up
I have a
in
plan
2020
for.
and then
Address
down
what we must
2021
do
and
to
down
support
again in
our small
2022.
businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries.
So crime is
But
not through the roof
frankly,
compared
the
to where it
American
was
people
4
are
years ago.
exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started
Moderators
by them
are
against their
questioning
political
Trump more
opponent.
than Kamala.
And I'm
Moderators
winning most
only,
of them,
as far as
and
I
will
can
win
tell,
the
they've only
rest on
corrected
appeal.
Trump once.
And you saw that with the decision that came down just
And to be
recently
clear,
from the Supreme Court.
they simply
I'm winning
corrected
most of
him on
them.
something
but
he
those
said
are
that
cases,
was absolutely
it's
not
called
true.
weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out.
Bud.
It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never
about the
happened in
brand.
this country. They used it to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who
Trump
has
is not planning to terminate
expressed disdain
the
for members of our
Constitution.
military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back
I don't care
in the
how
White
much you
House
dislike
with
him.
no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't
That's
stop
just
him.
not
We know
true.
J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American
Like, even
people.
if he wanted to, he wouldn't
Stop
be
it.
able
Thank
to.
you. Lindsay?
There are
Vice
enough
President
checks and
Harris,
balances
in your
to make
last
sure that
run
doesn't
for
happen.
president.
So,
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your
Someone's more of an
campaign
IPA
says you
person,
don't.
huh?
You supported decriminalizing border
What is Blue Moon,
crossings.
lager?
Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values
Belgian
have not
ale.
changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking. Because
it grazed his ear, but
I made that very clear in 2020.
he got
I will
almost
not ban
assassinated.
fracking.
I think it's okay
I have
for him
not
to say
banned
I took
fracking
a
as
bullet
Vice
in the
President of the
head.
United States, and in fact,
Slight
I was
hyperbole,
the
but,
tie-breaking vote on the Inflation
someone took a
Reduction
shot at him.
Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil
Yeah, the fracking is
production
interesting
in
because
history because of an approach that recognizes
a lot of people are hating
that we
on Kamala
cannot
for changing her
over-rely
position on
foreign
it.
Oil. As it
But
relates
didn't
to my values,
people
let me
want
tell
her
you,
to
I
change
grew
her
up
position
a
on it?
middle-class kid raised by a
And then she
hardworking
does,
mother
and people just say that
who
she's lying.
worked and saved
Or they're
and
mad
was able
that
to
she
buy our
did
first home when I was a
for
teenager.
political reasons.
The values I bring
It's
to
just
the
like,
importance
guys,
of home ownership, knowing not
Take yes
everybody
for an
got
answer.
handed
Just accept the win.
$400 million
She changed.
on a
We
silver
wanted her
platter
to
and then
change
filed
her
bankruptcy
position on
6
it,
times
and she did.
is a value that I bring to my
Let's move
work
on.
to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related
Wait,
to
what was that about
having
Venezuelan
a friend
immigrants
when
have
I was
arrived in
high school who
Denver?
was sexually assaulted by her
It's
stepfather.
20,000,
And
not
my focus
40,000.
then on protecting women and children
And
from
it's not
violent
Denver
crime
either.
is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up.
Ooh,
I intend to be that
I like
president.
that. I like
President
that,
Trump,
Kamala.
Well, first of all, I wasn't given.
It's not about
$400
beating people down.
million.
It is
I
about
wish I
lifting
was.
people
My
up.
father
I think
was a
that's
Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens.
That was a good
And
one.
Great father, and I learned a lot.
No matter
from him,
which
but I was
side
given a
of the
fraction
aisle
of
you're
that,
on.
a tiny fraction.
Great
and I built
point.
it into many, many billions of
I
dollars.
will say,
many, many
I really
billions.
don't care who you
And when
are
people
gonna
see
vote
it,
for.
They are even surprised.
But it does bother
So
me that
we don't
Trump
have to
just gives
talk
people
about that.
nicknames and calls them by their
Fracking,
nicknames
she's been
all the
against
time.
it for 12 years. Defund the police.
I just don't
She's been
consider
against
that a
that
presidential
forever.
trait.
She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind.
He's
please.
talking now, Kamala.
Does that
Shut
sound
the
familiar?
fuck up.
She went out.
Oh my God, did he wait for her
in
to stop?
Minnesota
Hilarious.
and wanted to let
That side I
criminals
was
that killed
hysterical.
people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do
Did you
this.
just say Kamala
She
wants
wants
to
to
do
confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in
Transgender
Pennsylvania.
operations on prisoners?
If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania
It's a
will
strange way to
end
put it,
on day
in my
one.
opinion.
Just to finish, one thing so important in
It's
my
not
opinion.
exactly accurate.
So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to
There's
talk
only
about the
56
peaceful
days to the
transfer of power,
election?
which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out.
It's the companies putting prices on things. And they've recently been outed as price
Aides in the
gouging.
West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people? That she allowed
literally
to pour
while
in. She was the
breaking and
border
entering
czar.
into
Remember
the
that.
Capitol
She
building.
was the
So,
border
I'm
czar.
not sure
she
it
doesn't
was
want to be
that
called the
out
border
of
czar
line.
because she's embarrassed by
And
the
it
border.
wasn't
In
a
fact, she
fucking
said at the
headshot
beginning,
or something
oh, I'm
like
surprised you're not talking about the border
some
yet.
police
That's
camera
because
videos I've
she
seen
knows what a
recently.
bad job they've done. What about those people?
They shot her and then she died later in the
When are they going to be
hospital.
prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask-
are
Crime
those-
rates are not
David,
down all
when
over
are
the
those
world.
people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching an
You might
unfold on
ask her that
television. It's a very
question.
simple question as we move
I'm
forward.
going to bring
toward
up
another
just a
election.
live fact
Is there
check here to help
anything
me.
you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others.
On
I said,
January 6th.
I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about
There's actually a
former
video of
Speaker
Nancy
Pelosi, but I do
Pelosi
want Vice
saying
President
that
Harris
she
to
had
respond.
tried and asked for
at
more
the Capitol
security
in
and
January
was
6th.
denied.
I was the
So
vice
I'm not sure
president
that was
elect.
really
I
a
was
failure
also
of
an
her
acting
doing
senator.
her
I
job,
was
per
there.
se.
And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital.
I don't agree that he
desecrate
told them
our
to
nation's
attack the
capital.
Capitol.
On that day,
I'm sorry.
140 law enforcement officers
I
were
see
injured.
where the argument
And some
comes
died.
from.
And understand, the
But he
former
did use the
president
words
has been
peacefully and
indicted
patriotically.
and
I
impeached
don't.
for exactly that
You know what
reason.
happened,
But
obviously.
this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching
That was a crazy
who remembers
moment
what January
when that
6th
happened.
was,
Stand back and stand
I
by
say
was wild
we don't
at
have
the
to
time.
go back.
I don't know how many of
Let's
you
not
remember
go back.
it, but
We're not going back. It's time
it
to
was not
turn
what
the
needed to
page.
be said.
And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go
It is
backwards to
interesting
the
that,
past.
you know,
Let me just follow up here.
Trump is really running on a campaign of distrusting the government.
That was where bloodbath was.
You have to trust
Also,
him that he's going to
on
go in and
Charlottesville,
change
That
things.
story has been, as you
But
would
it
say,
really plays on
debunked.
people's
Laura
distrust of the
Ingraham,
government,
Sean
whereas
Hannity,
Kamala
Jessica,
and the
all of these
Democrats
people,
are
they
really
covered it.
running
If
on
they
a
go
campaign
an
of
extra
trusting
sentence, they
the
will see it
government.
was perfect. It was debunked in
And
almost
it's-
every newspaper, but they still
How do
bring
you
it up,
choose
just like
between
they bring
trusting the government and
2025
distrusting
up.
the government?
They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you
it's
this.
an easy
you talk
choice for
about
some people,
the
obviously,
Capitol.
but-
Why are we allowing these millions
Ultimately,
of
we
people
all
to come
rely on
through
the government, whether
southern
we
border?
trust
How come
them or
she's
not.
doing anything?
So-
And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You say, come on,
Yeah, get
come on
Biden
down
out
to
of
the
bed.
office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly
however, I
claimed
don't
that
think
you
that they
won,
can just
many
change
times
border
saying you
laws
won in a
overnight,
landslide.
unfortunately.
In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
no
Republican.
Judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread
standing.
fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts,
to be clear, they didn't have standing,
on it.
not because of who he was, but
Georgia,
because
and
there
I'll show
was
you Wisconsin,
no
and I'll show you
real
Pennsylvania,
evidence.
and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but
they
you know
presented
what?
their
It doesn't
evidence.
matter, because
The
we have to
judges
solve the
looked at
problem
the
that we have
evidence
right
and
now.
said,
That's old news.
this is
And
not
the problem that
good
we
enough,
have right now
basically.
is we have a
Just so we're all
nation
clear.
in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election.
Wait, I saw that clip. He's saying that he was being sarcastic?
But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks
heavily
ago. He said, when I
publicized today
win,
that he
those
admitted
people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election
that he
officials.
lost the election
He says will
finally.
be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend
There was a major fraud in the 2020 election?
fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have
There's
traveled the
zero
world as Vice
evidence
President
to
of the
support
United
that,
States.
unfortunately.
And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way, in a presidential
Are illegal
debate and
immigrants going to
deny
play a role in this year's
what
election? I don't know.
Over and over again, our
Certain
court
states are
cases you have
banning
lost
illegal immigrants from
because
voting.
you did, in fact, lose that election.
Hard to say. No,
It
this
leads
is
one
nice
to
and warm
believe
pizza.
that perhaps we do not
The
have
pizza's not
in
cold.
the
I don't know
candidate
why
to
you
my
think that.
right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about facts.
200,000
That's
plus people
deeply
voting in an
troubling,
hour?
And the American people deserve better.
Do you know how many people there are?
Let me just tell
In
you about world
America?
leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man.
200,000
He's a
is
tough
a drop
person.
in the bucket.
Smart.
That's like a
Prime
small
Minister
town.
of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing
Looks
up?
a little firm, yeah,
He said,
because it's not, it's
you
Papa
need
John's. It's
Trump
not
back as
it's not
president.
great pizza.
They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going
Non-citizen
on
voting
with
is
North
not a
Korea,
thing.
by the way. He said Russia
Correct.
was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country. He ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban
hard to say who's doing better. They're both
said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump.
They're talking so fast. There's so many like lies and half-truths and things that
but
it's
when
hard
this
to...
weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes.
Trump seems like he's getting a little
votes. What you
flustered.
did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in making.
I'll do more
President
lives.
Biden has not been able to
I'm
break
figuring
through
out the whole live thing.
How would you do it?
What I really want, I might have to do it
let's
on
understand how we
YouTube
got
or
here.
Twitch or something.
On
I really
October
want
7th,
what I'm watching to be behind
Hamas,
me, you know?
A terrorist organization slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
But I'm also working with
Many of them
Substack
young
to
people who
figure out how
were
to make
simply
this better,
attending a
right? So
concert.
maybe they can
Women were horribly
integrate.
raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now.
Has anyone truly
Israel
answered a question?
has
Yes,
a right
they have
to defend
both
itself. We would.
actually answered questions.
And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the
I
way
would love
it
to
will
watch a
end is
movie
we need a
on a
ceasefire
live.
deal, and we need
I think
the
that sounds like a lot of
hostages
fun.
out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel,
all right,
and
I'll
an
think
equal
about
measure
it.
for the
Maybe I will.
Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
I like her answer here. I want Trump to tell his answer and not just rip her answer apart.
Out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have
irrelevant
never,
if you were
ever,
president.
I
You're
know
not
Putin
president.
very
It's
well.
happening.
He would have
How
never,
will you
and there was
change
no
it?
threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people.
Ukraine's got nothing to do with the
far worse than
question,
people
Don.
understand what's going
Come
on
on.
over there.
How
But
will
when
you
she
fix the
mentions
Israel
about
situation?
Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't.
Oh my
even
God!
meet
Don't tear apart her
with
answer.
Netanyahu
What will you
when he
do,
went
man?
to Congress to make a very
What the
important
fuck?
speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's
Great.
president,
She hates
I
Israel.
believe that Israel
Are you
will
gonna
not exist
fucking
within 2
give us an
years from
answer
now. And I've been pretty good at
about what you
predictions,
will
and I
do
hope
to
I'm
fix
wrong
the
about that one.
situation?
She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population.
He's not
because
gonna answer this question.
The whole place is going to get blown up.
Oh
Arabs,
boy.
Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And
I
they are
actually made a
spheres
drinking
of
game,
terror,
but I don't have
horrible
a
terror.
way of
They had no money.
pinning it.
There's a big story.
So
and
it's
you
at the
know,
very
you
top of
covered
the
it
chat,
very
but
well,
it's probably
actually.
too far
They
away
had
for you to
no
say. I mean,
money for terror.
I can post it again
They
here.
were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now
I haven't
what
really
they're
been following
doing is
along,
they're spreading
unfortunately.
that money around.
Oh, I can't
Look
even
at what's
post it.
happening
Sorry.
with the Houthis and Yemen. Look
When
at
I
what's
post this
going
video
on in
after,
the
I'll
Middle East.
include it.
this would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true.
He says you hate Israel.
My entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality. She literally just said a second ago. It is very well known
defends Israel's right to
Donald
defend
Trump
themselves.
is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin
Israel
that he
contest.
can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known
I don't know about love
that
letters,
these
but
dictators
he was pretty buddy-buddy with the evilest world
for you to
leaders.
be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why
he about to take
we
a nap?
understand that
I don't think he looks
have to have
sleepy.
a
He looks like
president
he's
who is not
calculating
consistently
pretty hard.
Weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think
This narrative is crazy.
Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely
everything he's
incredible.
saying right now
it wouldn't
is
have
weird.
happened with me.
And I don't mean
The
weird in
leaders
like
of
the
other countries think that
Republicans
they're
a weird
weak
way.
and
It's
incompetent,
strange
and they are.
what he's saying.
They're grossly incompetent. And I just
He
asked one
literally just
question.
talked about
Why
Russia,
does Biden
about
go in and
Putin
kill
being
the Keystone Pipeline
facetious
and
when
approve the
endorsing
single
Kamala?
biggest
Trump
deal
said
that
that
Russia's ever
in
made,
interviews
Nord
all
Stream 2,
last
the
week.
biggest pipeline anywhere in the world, going to Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Commercial break. All right, let's check in, everybody, during this commercial break. How we feeling? How do we feel about this Substack Live? It's my first time doing anything live. So, I would have loved to do fact checking, but I can't really bring anything up on the screen. It's just going to be me and you here. So, also, I could not possibly fact check all of these things as quickly as they are saying them. They are going a million miles a minute. He has a much better power face. Okay. I'm nice to look at. Thank you. I'm your only source of news. I hope you're still doing your own fact checking because, while I appreciate your support, I am still just a human being, and there's going to be mistakes every once in a while. I can see the pizza in your teeth. Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't do anything about it. The only reflective surface I have is the camera, and I'm not going to get up super close to it and pick pizza out of my teeth. So if you can see the pizza in my teeth, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to deal with it. I'm not frozen, so whoever that comment is from, it's just you. Thank you for taking the time to do this. You're welcome. You're quite welcome. Here's a question. Would you all be watching the debate anyway? Are any of you only watching the debate right now along with my live? I would love to host election night. That would be a ton of fun. I want to moderate. Their moderators are too, they're just, he's good, but it's so formal, you know? Sometimes it's just like, hey, you're done talking now. It's his turn. Only because of this live, amazing. It is awesome eyes. Is that a slang I'm not familiar with? Me as moderator would be unhinged. I wouldn't give a fuck. I guess I'll take this moment to just remind everybody that the point of this channel is for you all to watch and learn and make up your own minds. I am not here to push either party. I don't care who you vote for. I do not endorse anybody. I am not sponsored by anybody. I have my own opinions, but I try to keep them totally separate from this channel. I do not let my own biases dictate what I do and do not report. And I have no interest in convincing you who to vote for or influencing you really in any way other than to influence you to stay informed, I suppose. So really, I appreciate you guys for being here. And, you know, I think that if you're watching me, it's probably, I hope, because you're tired of all the bullshit commentary. And I know that what I'm doing tonight is obviously commentary and giving my own opinions, but generally I don't do that. I think the Substack allows me a little more liberty. These lives are a little more fun